Morning, everyone. Oh, nice to see some friends here. Everyone's coming in alphabetical order, so it'll just be people called Aardvark. Anyway, welcome and good morning. We've got loads of attendees coming on today, so just give it a minute before we get started. We'll get going nice and promptly. So we're doing this webinar as I was doing my previous webinars during lockdown. I've gone back to doing them sort of in the morning, so to benefit UK participants. And so today we've mostly got UK, European, and Eastern, Middle Eastern people, and from India, which is lovely to see. I think if you could, I'd really welcome questions and things coming up in the chat. One thing I'd be really interested to see is get people's views about whether they'd prefer me to do these typically at 10:30 in the morning or at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 o'clock in the afternoon is 8 o'clock Pacific time, so that can go for that. Right. Okay. So enough of the interim chat. Let's get going. We've got a great turnout already. It's okay. Lovely to see everyone. Okay. Let us crack on. So, good morning. Welcome to this in the second of this series of webinars I'm doing, specifically about Teams rooms and hybrid spaces. And today is about taking a much deeper dive, looking into the Microsoft Front Row concept. This is me. I am the Managing Director, owner of Visual Displays. We formerly ran as Paradigm. Speaking personally, I'm a specialist consultant involved in standards, and I currently chair AVIXA's Standards Steering Committee. I've been involved with writing and managing standards with AVIXA ever since we got started back in the Infocom days. One thing I'd like to say about that is that I will talk about standards today, but this is very much my personal take and not AVIXA's. So that's something to make a note of. And you know, the thing about standards I have now is just to make them as relevant as I can, and I consult about them. And I just try and keep them as simple and usable and as relevant as possible for clients, so that they really, once people have adopted it and you go over that tipping point, then they're absolute no-brainer to use. So some of this work that I'm presenting and I've been developing comes out of my consultancy work and thoughts and so forth, and research I've done in consultancy for Google, for Cabinet Office, and people like that. And another background to this, which I mentioned in my first webinar, is that one thing that was very inspirational to me was the Microsoft document, bringing Teams devices in the workplace. So, and the authors for that, two Microsoft guys, Jimmy Vaughan and Joe Saracen, I think it's a really phenomenal piece of work. And again, I'd like to emphasize this is very much my personal take on it. I'm not trying to speak for Microsoft or anything. I'm just trying to put my personal take and reaction to it. I'm very much going to focus on the display sides of things today and be very specific. You know, as many of you know, my big thing is to take a holistic view to the meeting space and the hybrid space design. But today we're going to be really quite specific. I'm also very aware, you know, keeping an eye on the channel, that the Teams platform is evolving very much, and that's going to be aspect ratios, multiple camera support, and so forth. I'm not going to address that directly, because what I'm talking about is, if you like, the raw materials, the canvas, the digital canvas, as I will call it, which will facilitate that. I also wrote this article for AV Magazine, which went out just before Christmas, and that got a tremendous result. And that was, if you like, me trying to focus on what seemed to go wrong in 2021, which was that everyone was desperate to get the hybrid spaces installed, but without being at that point where they understood what the workflows really were. And that's very much the theme for 2022, to think in those terms and to take a more positive take on that. You know, the old carpenter's saying is, you know, measure twice and cut once, and that's really what I feel that, if you like, is a kind of a theme or a byline for what we're trying to achieve with these hybrid spaces in 2022. So there's been a lot of excitement about this visual that Microsoft have put out for their, as a kind of a taster for the front row concept. And what I really want to do today is to unpack that in some kind of you know, granular detail. So, you know, you can see how I'm going to approach this, talk about size. I hope you like the very tasteful color scheme there, but just to group the things together, because I'm just trying to show these actually in kind of the logical groupings. So I think the front row concept is absolutely you know, a marvelous thing. I think that Microsoft, you know, other brands are available. I say that to all my other friends there from Google and Zoom and so forth. But I think that work piece has been real thought leadership, because although, of course, Microsoft want to promote their brand and they're doing a good job at it, you know, I think the great thing about the whole front row thing is it actually speaks to it's product agnostic. And I think it helps people to, you know, to think and focus their thoughts. And that's really what I'm going to try and do today. But I'm going to try and do it in some details. And I think that if you look at these granular elements that, okay, so I've been told that my slides aren't showing, so let me get back to that. So there's me telling everyone what to do, and I haven't done the whole kind of 101 thing, so apologies for that. Right, so hopefully that's all working now. So just a quick scoot back just to say what I was doing. So anyway, you'll get all these slides after this and a link to the recording. So just to show you the slides quickly, that is the Microsoft Teams piece and the AV Magazine piece. This is the Microsoft concept, and this is us beginning to drill down on it. And so what I'm saying here is that I think that the lovely thing about Front Row is that it offers opportunities to either make real step changes or incremental improvements on each of these elements. And so there's an opportunity there for each of those elements to be addressed in existing spaces, in new spaces, and that really will, you know, so I think that this can drive really quite remarkable results. So what can we actually see here? So without actually doing any kind of analytical work, what does this visual tell us? So what we're seeing here in this mocked up visual is that we're seeing an image which has got really low luminance. It's not bright in the conventional sense of the word. But by the way, luminance and brightness are quite useful words to distinguish between, because luminance is what you actually measure, and brightness is how we perceive the kind of the quantity of light. Very critical here, which I'll come back to, is that what we're seeing in that image are really deep black levels. And that display is working in high ambient light. The area is flooded with natural light, and you can imagine working in this space all day. So the other thing I'd look at here is the image baseline. I'm going to come back to that, keep looping back to that again. And by image baseline, just to be clear, I mean the distance from the bottom of the screen to the finished floor level. So how high the overall image is off the floor. I think possibly this one is too high. There's another one we'll look at, but this is a question. It's an open question, and I'd be interested to hear people's take on that, because I think that has, thinking about the position of the image also unlocks the possibilities for what we can do with these displays. Another thing to point out, that this is a flat screen. And of course, the biggest thing of all is it's big, it's massive. And that is I think, is the beginning, that kind of that unlocks a whole cascade of elements that we can take benefit from after that. A thing that I am particularly obsessed with, those of you who know me had heard me rattling on about this ad nauseam. But the other thing about this visual is that it's a matte screen. It's non-reflective. It's like real life. You know, the days of shiny panels, I cannot imagine why people are still putting in shiny flat panels, apart from usually being too small. They're just distracting. It's an obstruction, and we'll talk about that more, about unlocking the experience for users. So, working down our list, the top of the list is size, and that is the kind of the real opening of the floodgates that I think the front row concept does. Now, size is absolutely critical, and we use the display image size standard in the AVIXA standard. I moderated that task group and co-wrote it. In fact, this year it makes you feel horribly old how quickly they come around. We have to decide whether we're going to republish it or rewrite it at all. But it's a very important standard to AVIXA, so, and to all of our demographics. So it'll just be a question of what we do with it, not whether. I'm not going to do a deep dive on Discas, but I am going to refer to it. For those of you who are interested, I'm very happy to run a course on Discas. The one I run, there's a CTS renewal point, and I'm working my way around campuses, for example, at the moment in the UK and Ireland. Very happy to do that for the teams as I go around. But just to kind of think about the element, that the principles of it, is that what Discas was good at is that it actually confirmed the old 468 rule in many ways, and it kind of triangulated in a very powerful way. And in general terms, I mean that it should be used in more detail, but as a starting point, people use the 3% element height, and that equates to the 6:1 rule, which is basically saying that the farthest viewer should be no further than 6 times the image height. That is a kind of a core of it. However, and this is why I was saying when I was talking about my role within standards, is that I do take, I think I think we're in the era of standards, 2.0, where standards have to be used and they have to have relevance in a much more direct way. And I think standards do have to be used critically, and that's a big obsession and a very big part of the way that I work. And thinking about hybrid workspaces, about Teams rooms, and actually thinking, using the front row concept piece as we are, is that my feeling is that my strong opinion is, and this is how I work with clients, is that we're in the era now of picture in picture, where we're going to have a content window, typically a content window with some with the important stuff in it. It might be an Excel spreadsheet or something detailed. And I think the thing about Discas in 2022 in hybrid spaces, that we need to apply that rule to the main content window and not the overall image size. And there you can see an example of the maths. And I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint and talk that through. Hopefully, that the slides themselves, when you get them afterwards, will be helpful. But also, I'm very happy to engage with anyone to talk through this in any way. As you can hear, I'm pretty passionate about it. So in visual displays, the way that I see it is I think in displays in terms of a continuum. and you've got these overlapping, as things stand technologically, you've got this overlapping sequence. So you go from flat panel displays, typically, the tipping point is sort of 90 to 98 inches. And then you've got the overlapping area with projection. And I'm very specifically talking now about ambient light rejecting laser projection. Come back to that in a minute. And then the overlap with DV-LED screens, direct view LED screens. Now, I'm not going to talk about DV-LED today. I'm going to focus on projection. And as we go through, that will become more and more self-evident. DVD has its place. If we get time towards the end, then I will talk about it a little bit. But I'm really going to intend to cover that in another session in future. So just very much about projection today. And so 2022 really has to be the year of projection done properly. Most of the campuses now, I work extensively in higher ed, are taking this on board, very strongly. No names, no pack drill, but these are both campuses that I've worked on. What we've got in common here is that these were both taken with my engineer's iPhone for sign off. I mean, not the right hand one, by the way, but the left hand one. That was a project we finished for Kinley at Glasgow University. That is the oh, my dog's come to join the conversation. Excuse that. And the right-hand one, well, that's just something that a lot of people will see on their own estates, and that's, I'm not going to go down the rabbit trail there, but that's a typical example where you see effectively building services or facilities management having paid money to have hardware and spending money on electricity to kill the function that actually the room is supposed to take place in that room. So projection done properly, basically, I feel very strongly liberates the Microsoft front row concept, at least for the time being. As I say, DV-LED very much has a place, particularly in the future, but we're going to cover projection today for some very specific reasons. So the thing about DISCAS is that, it's always like you're sort of like scraping just to get to that bar of good enough. The thing about if you make the move to projection, you can actually go to any size you want, because once you make that call to do projection properly, you're then free to choose the sort of size, the resolution, and so forth. It removes the size limitations. It means that we can apply this digital canvas concept, which is how I see Microsoft, how I see what they've done with Microsoft. So, life-size remote participants become possible. People can appear in some sort of realistic size on your screen, and also it removes barriers. I think with what we're talking about, some of the things are enablers and some of the things are barriers, like a shiny flat panel display. Because it's like people are stuck in some aquarium, usually somewhere high up on the wall, and those are sort of the push-pull elements that really go to make a great user experience. Right, so that was all about the quantity, the size. Now let's move on to the quality. So into the second group of characteristics that we looked at on that intro slide. So in terms of image quality, contrast is the key driver. If you don't have good contrast on an image, which is basically a function of ambient light, whether it's a flat panel display, whether it's projection display, it's how you deal with ambient light. If you don't have good contrast, then basically you've lost the battle in advance. Even if you've got 4K resolution, for example, then the perceived resolution is much lower than that if you talk to users. And we use the AVIXA PISCAR standard, which is now ISCAR standard, which is just about to hit the streets here in 2022. So the PISCAR is projected image system contrast ratio. ISCAR is image system contrast ratio. So basically what we've done is we've taken our PISCAR standard, which was just for projected images, and now the lovely thing about that standard is it applies to displays across the board. It's technology agnostic. Now, with regards to hybrid spaces, that fits the category of what we call basic decision making, and the contrast yardstick we've got to hit with that is 15:1. It sounds very low if you think about the kind of brochure contrast figures that you see, but this is very specifically about what the white and the black levels can be on the same image at the same time. 15:1 is actually a massive ask in projection. It's almost always impossible to achieve unless you use ambient light rejecting projection screens. Now, this thing about ambient light rejecting projection screens is that one of the classic mistakes that people have always made, and it's a tradition, and it's not a question of pointing fingers. People have traditionally chosen the projector first, but if you don't know what the screen material is going to be, if you haven't chosen the screen material relevant to the function and the location where you're going to be, and then done the work, done the maths, because there are calculators there, then from that you can then work out what the projector lumens and contrast ratio that you need. Now, if you look on my website, there'll be some links with this afterwards. This is not rocket science, but this is what we do for our clients. And as I say, we really have gone past the tipping point now, where projection done properly is an absolute must. Now, moving on. So the thing about contrast, if you like, the issue with it's a comparative thing. It's saying how white is the peak white relative to the black level in the image. It doesn't say how black the black should be or how white the white should be. Now, one thing that's often designed into a room inadvertently, particularly when you use flat panels, and especially when you use DV-LED, direct view LED, is eye strain. Is unfortunately and unintentionally people design in eye strain, and that's asthenopia, the posh word for eye strain. And the metric that we use for that is task luminance ratio. So task being the word that we use for the object that we're looking at any one moment. It might be notepad, it might be your neighbor, it might be the screen. And the idea is, if you look at all of the international metrics, is the task luminance ratio should be within a 3:1 ratio. So the luminance, the brightness of anything that you look at should fall within a 3:1 ratio. Now, within meeting rooms, the traditional, if you like, the benchmark, the reference point for that is white paper on the desk, because for a given amount of ambient light, typically you have 300 to 500 lux falling on the working plane, falling on the desk. And if you look here at the slide, this is a screen grab from a simple spreadsheet that I have. Again, if you want it, just ping me and I'll send it to you. But just looking at the math there, so in that mid-range, so there's 400 lux of light, ambient light, illuminance, the posh word for it, falling on the table. The gain of white paper, recycled white paper, is around 1. Very simple calculation. That means that the luminance of that piece of paper, the brightness of that under the reflecting the light from the ambient light, is around 120, 130 nit. That's 127 candela per square meter, which is the SI unit that we use to measure it. Now, I use the task luminance ratio of 2.5:1. You can make your own call on that, but that gives a little bit of headroom, which I feel comfortable with. And there you can see that the maximum, under those sorts of circumstances, the maximum image luminance you want is around 300 nit, 300 candela per square meter. And very often people will put in displays of 500 nit or brighter, and that is a mistake. And really, the important thing, paradoxically, is the black levels, because if you think about the Piscar thing, the Piscar rule of 15:1, what that is saying is that the black level has to be 15 times less than the white level. So very much the driver for achieving really good displays is the black level that you can deliver. And that's not the black level in the brochure, that's the black level in that room under that ambient light on a case-by-case basis. Right, the next thing. So aspect ratios, reading the feeds at the moment, that's a bit of a movable feast. My estimate of the, I haven't worked it out, but it looks to me as if the front row concept is based on a 21:9 aspect ratio, but it's there or near offer. This is a photo of one of Microsoft's first kind of integrations, putting a front row into practice. There you can see there are two I think they're low-cost laser wide-angle projectors there, not quite UST, but I think that looks to me as if that's in a 32:9, so basically two HD images wide. That's just an estimate. If you do, and then thinking about how that turns into resolution, if say 21:9 is going to become one of the standard aspect ratios choices that's going to be there, then using a UHD resolution projector, then that would yield a resolution of 3840 by 1646, or near offer. But thinking about just looking at these displays and thinking about how it's going to go. I mean, at the moment there's limited bandwidth on with a single feed. So the idea of getting ultra high resolution with the thumbnails, with the individual participants and so forth, that's kind of a watch this space thing. I was having a chat with a friend of mine who runs the AV and media at a big merchant bank, and we were talking about going back to the days of multiple codecs and so forth. That's not my area, but all I'm predicting with some confidence, I feel, is that the resolution of the video that will come through to be displayed on your displays, that will just go up. That will go up in I would think in leaps and bounds over the next couple of years. So in practice, I think the 4K projection is the way to go with this. And again, as a commercial practice, then in terms of what is commercially available and realistic to use in terms of resolution and brightness, so forth, are these 3 LCD pixel shifted UHD projectors. So, we work very closely with Epson. They're very good partners, but we also work very closely with other projector manufacturers as well. So that's kind of a little thought about that. Now, I mentioned baseline before, and I did say that we'd look at this before. So, this is just a visual estimate. I'm not making any claim to any form of accuracy. I'm just making an observation here. But it seems to me that in the visual for front row, the baseline of the image is lower than the one they've actually executed, that Microsoft executed in their evaluation center there. And I point that out because I think that there are a couple of things there. One is that has an impact on the camera position, where you can put the camera. And very often you'll see, particularly last year and before, that the camera position is regarded as the datum, and then everything else has to fall around it. So you have some big telly high up on the wall, and people getting neck strain looking at these people as if they're in an aquarium high up on the wall. But also thinking about having life size, render people in life size. If they're going to be effectively, in the virtual sense, seated opposite to you, then I think the image baseline has to go down. but then that you always get caught in a loop with these things, which is to do with what the impact it then has on camera position. So in the visual of front row, there's no camera to be seen. It's a conceptual piece, but in this example where Microsoft have actually built one of these, the VC camera is there. But I'm going to talk about projection lens issues, because I'm going to get very specific here. Looking at the Microsoft Teams document that I referred to before, it's very clear that Microsoft sees the future of Teams very much involving projection. And here on the left-hand side of that slide, you can see that. Now that's fine. That's one way of implementing it, and also I have to say, as an important kind of piece of common sense, it's actually a very low cost way of the lowest cost way of implementing projection when you hang the projectors off the ceiling like that with standard lenses. And then you can then there's the issue of moving the projectors closer to the screen, again by eye. I'm doing this by eye, but so just bear that in mind. The projectors here are sort of ultra wide angle. They're not ultra short throw. And what the projectors that we are working with are 3 LCD projectors with this so-called periscope UST lens. And there's a reason for that, which is to do with the angle of light hitting the screen, because that unlocks a whole bunch of possibilities for us. And also it means that we can use a particular screen material which is suitable for this. I'm just going to show you, try and do this trick here. So let's just try and get this going here. So this is an example of the ambient light rejecting material that we use. It's covered in dust, of course. It's been on my desk, but that's looking at it from one direction, and then looking at it from the other direction, it's white. These are very advanced materials, and for the moment they are the best fit for what we are trying to achieve with these large screen hybrid displays. So let's go back to the show. I hear you asking yourselves, well, how are you doing it in visual displays? Well, thank you for asking. This is our VDL digital canvas, and this is our approach to encapsulating all that we've learned and all that we feel that our users and clients need. We call it the VDL digital canvas. We're making these displays as self-contained units. And the idea about them is that it's not just about the image, delivering the image. It's also being respectful and observant of the processes required to do deployments at enterprise level, whether that's in corporate, in education, or what have you. Basically, these are units that are designed to come in, be delivered, lined up, and within an hour, the engineer goes away. Each unit comes with a built-in rack unit, 12U rack unit. So it's a rolling unit. So the idea is that the integrator will pre-populate the rack in advance, show up in the day when our team have actually delivered and set the unit up, wheel the rack in, plug it in, and away you go. And then there's space to fit the VC camera or the camera bar as well. These are available in a variety of sizes and finishes. We also do them as a as structure only, so that they can be clad according to by another interiors company. We also do them as flat pack for export. And in terms of the finishing, we have part of what we do is industrial design consultancy, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. So bear with me on this. But the point about UST projection, or one of the points about UST projection, is apart from being able to achieve those kind of black levels that's needed using a UST lens with that material I just showed you, which is specifically for UST lenses, then because the light is hitting the screen at a very acute angle, then that opens up some other possibilities. And just running through them, and these are not actually sort of created. They're kind of created in a positive way or an indirect way by moving to the digital canvas and by using UST projection. So these are the four options here, or I think what are the four ways of looking at cameras in different ways. So a camera can be put in an offset position and then use some perspective control, like keystone control, to partly flatten the thing out to give a more realistic rendering, as if you're on the level. There are some end stops there. I do accept that, but I think there's something that's there to be used. I think that actually the time has come now, particularly on these larger spaces, when it's not as if you looking, if you've got a larger space, you can move your head around. I think the possibility of hanging a small form factor camera like a Hudley or something in free space in front of the screen, that can be done. And the thing that we are particularly interested in and working on at the moment is that we can drill a small hole in the screen, and behind that, because we can place a small form factor camera, but because of the angle of the light coming up from the lens, it doesn't shine into the lens of the camera. And of course, the other thing is that I think that if for those enterprises where the template, where the screen layout is stable, where you've got, if you like, the corporate, you've got the corporate standard layout or templates, whatever you want to call them, then I think the cameras can be positioned in front of the screen at lower level, where there's a dead area. And like I was saying, that the other part about that is that it allows the baseline of the floor to be optimized, because I think you've got this kind of push-pull thing between the needs of the remote participants and the in-person participants. And if you want to create an immersive experience, one where the user connects, has a good feeling of connection, then I think that the relative position up and down of the whole image size is actually quite an important ask, and that needs to be opened out some more. So one of the reasons why we feel that we've been waiting for a long time for this, and we were so happy when the hybrid spaces and Teams Room began to move up the food chain in terms of what they wanted to achieve, is that my background and my company's background and my partner's background is very much in immersive displays and in simulation. We've been involved in that image on the left there. That is a dome we did. It's, for NDA reasons, it's been repurposed as a helicopter. It was actually a fast jet, and there were 14 WQ projectors in that, creating a complete workspace. But the whole thing about immersive has been very important for us in understanding how to deliver that image quality. Now, I'm very proud to have on the call today my technical partner, Matt Roberts from Portal Devices. Matt and I have worked together over many years on really very complex projects, and helped people with a number of solutions and innovations. Matt is a super smart guy, and And quite soon, there's a new concept I want to show you that that Matt has been working on, that we've been discussing for a while. But so all I want to say there is that we have a number of tools that we use to develop very advanced displays, and that is something that we bring to the party in terms of designing, leading edge displays for use in hybrid spaces and in Teams rooms. Okay, so now let's think about how you actually deliver the multiple projection that these widescreen formats, whether it's 21:9 or whatever it will be, how to do that. Now, in that evaluation suite that Microsoft had done for Front Row, looking at the photo closely, that looked very much like it's a hard edge blend. So you've got one image hard up against the other. The way of creating the seamless canvas is actually much better by using what we call soft edge blending, where you've got an overlap between the two images, usually around 15% of the image width, and then using software or hardware is to blend the image into a single desktop, a single digital canvas onto which you can then put what you want. Now, there are a number of ways of approaching that, but I think the way that we anticipate will be the main way of doing this, and this is what we're doing with the earliest versions that we are doing, is to use remote blending hardware, and so that it takes the source or sources, and then it does the blend to create that blended area. Now, the thing about that is apart from just delivering that basic single desktop, we're actually, effectively, we're back in the world of picture in picture here, where you've got multiple feeds coming through. Now, it might be that in the Teams workspace, that's effectively a single feed. But looking at the complexity of what some people are trying to do and want to do, then the fact is that by having this hardware solution, there's the option of having multiple inputs and having windows with flexible configurations to be able to deliver that. Now, just wanted to say that, coming back to making those observations made by the Ministry of the Blindingly Obvious, one of the headline observations about the front row display is that it's flat. Now, we think that's a beautiful concept, and don't get me wrong, but where we come from in the world of simulation, then we think that the next thing that we need to bring to the party, which we're already doing, are curved screen displays. So this is a design hot off the press by my partner Matt, and what you can see here is a combination of things. It's a combination of showing implementation of a curved screen design, and it's using the UST projector. So those original principles apply, but also there's some industrial design there which we bring to the. We have those sorts of high-level design facilities and capabilities which we're going to bring to this product range as well. So I think this is this will be one of the areas that Teams rooms can go in, but I'm not going to speak for Microsoft because this is very much my personal view. But Matt and I, we've thought very long and hard about this, and I think that the idea of having a curved screen is that there is some reciprocity in terms of the remote participants reflecting the shape and the room configuration of the in-person participants. I think it makes for a more organic and human-friendly configuration. And we've done that with UST, but I also have to say that curve screens with projections is a complex modeling business. There are actually end stops with how much you can do curve screens with UST lenses. And if we want to do more sort of radical curves, then that takes us back to using standard lenses around 1.5 to 1 and so forth, 1.2, 1.5 to 1, but that's kind of a separate sidebar. Doing it this way, again, you've got the possibility of a wide range of aspect ratios and resolutions. And this is based around the IP and tools that we have that we're repurposing, so that everything that we brought to the party for immersive and simulation displays, they are now available, right now to be used in hybrid spaces. He said clicking the slides the wrong way. Okay, so we've made fairly good time today, which is what my intention was. I'm going to stick around when we do finish to so that there's any questions or comments or dialogue or chat we want to have, that I'll be there for that. But let's just take a quick review of what we've been through already. Size is absolutely everything. We've talked about the contrast, which is about the image quality. Luminance black and black level, that has to be set according to the space. What Microsoft have put here with this setting this beautiful display in a daylit space is possible to do, but it's very difficult, and that's what we can do. We've talked about aspect ratio and resolution. You can do these displays using HD projectors or using WU projectors, 1200 pixel high. But I think in terms of future proofing, for the time being, using 4K pixel shifted projectors is the current way forward. Pending the native 4K projectors that will inevitably come. Another great thing about projection, by the way, is it's like the old joke about the guys had the same axe for 100 years. It's just had 4 new handles and 3 new heads. When projector technology changes and they get brighter and higher resolution and cheaper, that then they can be changed out, so that there's a kind of a long-term cost of ownership issue there as well. I've talked about image baseline. This is something. It's an ergonomic factor. It's a human-centered design factor, but I think it's very important. Camera position. I've thrown some stuff out there. I've told you what we are working on, and what I think the possibilities are. We've talked about projector configurations, ways that we can deliver these displays, and if you like, an understanding of what each lens type brings to the party is important. But in practice, by the way, it's very much about the using either professional projector bodies with UST lenses, or professional projector bodies with wide angle, typically wide angle zoom lenses that we use. And one thing that we didn't go into today because of the time factor, but the DISCAS standard very much talks about the viewer locations and angles of view, and that was, if you like, one of the drivers for coming up with the curve design, because it just means that the person at the left-hand side of the table can see much more easily the remote participant at the right-hand side of the table. So that's that's where we come from. So wrapping up this presentation today, I think that the Microsoft front row concept is really a very helpful thing in itself, because I think the concept itself can be implemented, and because it actually gives us the hints, it gives us the cues about how how it is that we can design displays that might not be like that, but can use some of the key elements or the key learnings that we get from it. But if I wanted you to take one thing away from what I've been presenting today, is that this level of quality is available right now. You shouldn't settle for inadequate solutions, and do stop using the shiny and too small flat panels, because they are a barrier to effective hybrid meetings. Now, I've shown you how to do this. I've shown you how to achieve this and create display solutions for the best possible meeting experience. But we've worked hard. We've worked hard to get to this point where we know how to do this stuff. We're really proud of the VDL digital canvas, because we do feel it's the ultimate hybrid meeting display. And it's specifically designed to deliver, an authentic and inclusive user experience, and it's about it's about bridging the gap between the in-person and remote attendees, and to facilitate better, more effective collaboration. But although I've showed you how to do it, I just want to point out that I can do it, and my team can do this for you, right now, fully compliant with standards. It's not a cost issue even, because it's actually way cheaper than doing it with DVLED. So the digital canvas concept, I think it's very it's a real thing with where Teams rooms are going and where hybrid spaces are going. So hopefully you would want to start a conversation with us, and just to confirm what we can do for you. And a thing to say is that as specialists, our partners and our clients, they use they use our services piecemeal. We tend to fit a project team in the shape that's needed. So we do specialist consultancy. And also, by the way, I'm very careful to say here that I'm not an AV consultant, because AV consultants are very much part of my food chain, because they're my clients and their influences influence people using our products and services. But we have design, we have manufacture, we have the solutions and technology, not least the VDL digital canvas displays. We do projection screens of all types, of course, particularly ambient light rejecting screens, and we make immersive displays. And from that skill set, we do proof of concept, we can do product development and troubleshooting. And also, again, with my partner Matt at Portal Devices, we have advanced laser tools that can help with all levels of installation and doing complex projects, and also very advanced site surveys for those who need it. So we work with pretty much all of the channel, in various ways. It's very important for me to engage with that, because I think we're going through a very strong learning phase at the moment. So for example, like the failed musician I am, I'm doing a sort of tour of as many campuses as I can to learn about the issues that universities and colleges are facing. But all of our hardware and solutions, they come through the resale and integrated channels. Just a couple of other little info slides for you. There's quite a few end users on the call today. My friend and mentor Owen Ellis, who runs the AV user group and also the consultants group. For those of you who are end users who are not a member of this, then that's a very useful resource and a great way to learn, to socialize with other people who have your needs, and well worth it. And also, just remember that we've got a lot of standards within Avixa, and I use those in all kinds of ways in my work. So that's a resource for Avixa members. They're absolutely free, and I do advise you to go to that. Right, so that's me done. Thank you so much for participating. We've had a great turnout today. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stand and look a little bit stupid while I look in the chat and the questions to see if there's anything that I can address now. I'll stick around for a while, but I do want to be respectful of people's time. I always want to keep within the time that we said. So just excuse me while I look through the chat. Lots of friends saying hello to everybody. Adam, you got in there first. Mr. Sidwick, hello. Yeah, pointing out I'd failed to share my slides. Thank you. So Chris Skilton says that the idea is generally that the remote participants are in the same eye line as the in-room participants. But yes, in some respects, the display content at the top does seem high. Okay, so yeah, this was one thing about so in Discast, we use this 30-degree rule about the top of the display shouldn't be more than 30 degrees above one's eye line. But again, I feel that we have to have a bit of wiggle room here, and that's about and again, I would apply that to the main content window. I think the occasional look outside the comfort zone is all right, but when you've got content that you're going to be looking at all day, then using those parts of Discast which are to do with ergonomics and human comfort, then that should be respected. And Chris also asks an intelligent question. Okay, Chris, you're going to get a gold star today. So what's the most important driving thing in element height, if I'm reading this right? Text and font size, or a person's facial features for each window area. If I'm understanding that correctly, Chris, then I think that for me, the thing to get right is the text height or the font size, and it's just a scaling thing for a person's features. Obviously, as close to real size as possible, life size as possible, but there's a give and a take thing there. But again, the bigger the image, the more choice you have. Someone was making a point about the right-hand image is what you associate with projectors. Well, I think that Microsoft was showing an early deployment of that system, and I think it, of course, looking, you put something in to start with. It's a development piece, but I wouldn't criticize them for having made that attempt, because I think it's a really good start. So Jack's also asking, how close can you stand to these projection screens without interrupting the image? Well, using UST and using that kind of credenza style of delivery, you can walk right up to the credenza. Chris Skilton says, go on, revive rear projection. Well, we didn't have time to do that, but in another session, we will be looking at rear projection, particularly for 3D, where we've got some interesting things to do with that. Okay, so nice question. So Thierry, bienvenue. So how often should the blended projector be recalibrated to maintain the required standard? That is a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, because it depends how you do the blending. If something is stably installed, then by and large it won't be. But however, in order to have a stable, a sustainable long-term system installed, then the on-site techs or the AV engineers who support it, that's part of the handover, that they are taught how to do that, because it's like anything, once you know how to do it, it's very straightforward. But that's a great point, Thierry, because you do have to build that into the workflow of how you're going to maintain and keep a system going long term. Right, questions. So Chris asked, would you recommend the front row setup for people that are new to the VC? To make full use of the front row arrangement, do you need a 32:9 aspect? Okay, right. So Chris, your question is, to make full use of the front row arrangement, do you need a 32:9 aspect ratio dual screen, or does it work with 16:9? Again, there's a push-pull dynamic there, Chris, because you know, the wide, if you have a very wide screen, then you know the great thing about the front row concept is that it's effectively about a single, maybe a double row of people. If you want to use it with a larger group of people, say in a conventional U-shaped or round a table, then I think you're back to using 16:9 or possibly 21:9, because what happens is that you make the image as large as you need so that the people in the back can see, but that also makes the image wider. And and what you don't want is that the in-person participants who are close to the screen, you don't want them blocking the view to the back. So that actually is a driver that's a driver back to 16:9. So Chris, I think you're asking about the AV equipment used for the slide I'm showing. Was it a display or a projector setup? In all cases of anything that's practical that we looked at today, Chris, that was projection. And someone anonymous has said, with the push to installing a larger display within a meeting space for the new front row arrangement, how does this work with the latest requirements for reducing energy uses and also meeting clients' budgets? Well, that again is a great question, because we're doing a big project at a merchant bank, another merchant bank, where they wanted to put in a DV-LED display, but that was not allowed because of the heat output and the power draw that it was going to use. So projection is very much the most environmental and sustainable option. So I think that particularly on campuses, for example, the whole green and environmental thing is going to play a much bigger role, and that is a core strength of projection. And someone has asked, what about a motorized raising projection screen option, and then additionally a motorized raising camera? Well, in fact, both of those are actual current solutions, and they do work well in this space. Particularly on campus, universities will use motorized ambient light rejecting projection screens, the good ones, and also a camera on a drop from the ceiling. That's also an option. Having said that, thinking out loud, it's actually quite rare, and we distribute for Draper. And I think that the demand for the motorized camera drops will become much more needed this year. Okay, so there's a technical question from Chris. Mr. Butcher, you're keeping my toes today. For a hole to be drilled for a camera to be placed behind, how do you maintain the tension of the fabric? Another good question, Chris, but the answer is we don't, because what happens in those cases, the fabric is actually laminated to a laminated steel plate, so that we're working with a solid sheet. So Chris asks, if you design a space for front row, can it also be used for standard presentation or video conference usage? Or does this create an image size that is too big for a room? Well, I think that's a legitimate question, but I think in general terms, it's best to be generous with display size rather than mean. But also, using the digital canvas, the idea is that you can use sized windows within that space. I think in theory it is possible to have a display that's too big, but only if you felt that you had to occupy the entire space. But of course you don't. I think that rooms have to be the future of rooms is they're going to have to be multiple use, different workflows there. Sometimes you might just have a generous size, PowerPoint or something in it. Other times you're going to use the whole space for a complex Teams layout. Okay, well, look, we've quite a few of you stayed on to do that, but I've kind of got through the questions that were there that I could read and understand anyway. So finally, thanks so much for being on the call. The next one I do will be about the actual design of these hybrid workspaces, look at the principles of that, looking at the environmental standards and various aspects of that. For those of you who've registered, which you had to do to be on the call, then you will get an email thanking you for being there with a link to the slides and the recording of me stuttering and stammering my way through this presentation. So I'm really happy to see so many people, some old friends and some new friends and colleagues coming on too. And I will do the next presentation, the next webinar, I think next Thursday, and we'll do that late afternoon. But watch this space. As many of you know, I do regular posts on LinkedIn, so please, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and then you can keep updated with these. And I also post regularly about specific technical issues around this topic. So thanks again, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.